Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Paytm Money Talk. And today's topic that we have is dynamic asset allocation using Balance Advantage Fund. I'm Neeraj Gogoi, your host for the talk, and I really appreciate and welcome all of you. And today, that when we invest, it says that we need to have a proper balance between debt and equity, right? ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि पूरा का पूरा equity also, and that reduces the risk and it helps us to handle the volatility much better. So here is the topic today कि balance advantage fund को use करके how can we do the proper asset allocation. Now, again, before I start, very quickly, let me introduce what the Paytm Money Talk is all about. Again, you have been attending it. And what we try to do is we try to get asset fund managers, experts in the industry with decades of experience, so that we can learn something from their experience, from their wisdoms they have acquired over the years, and it can improve our investing game. So that is the whole objective of this particular talk, right? And again, I'd like to tell you that this talk is powered by Paytm Money. Today in our talk, we have got a very experienced and veteran expert in this field, and he is Mr. Sanjay Chawla. He is a Chief Investment Officer, Equity at BNP Paribas Mutual Fund, Baroda BNP Mutual Fund. Mr. Chawla is a master degree in management studies from BITS Pilani. Prior to joining Baroda BNP Paribas, he was senior fund manager with Aditya Birla AMCs. And before that, he was head of research with SBI Capital Market. So Chawla ji brings along with him decades of experience in the market. So it's a great pleasure to have Chawla ji in our show today. And Chawla ji, very welcome and namaskar.
Namaskar, Neeraj ji, and thank you so much. I am in great company, not only with you, but some of the illustrious speakers that you have brought along. Happy to be a part of that gallery. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yes, sir. We always have a very useful, very deep discussions on different aspects. And today we're going to talk about your Balance Advantage Fund as a whole, and a little bit about your Balance Advantage Fund, which has completed 5 years. Congratulations. And
thank you.
And as the first part of the program today, we always have a market lens. We try to understand. Today the market was absolutely flat, but as a fund manager, you are not concerned about day-to-day volatility or non-volatility, right? So you are always concerned about long-term, how the market looks like in the medium term, long-term. So there are a lot many changes happening, macroeconomic, geopolitics, and lot many things are happening, sir. So how do you see the market unfolding from here for next 1-2 years perspective?
So Neeraj ji, आपने सही पूछा है सवाल के you have macro factors as well as geopolitical factors. As an investment professional, हम हमेशा यही कोशिश करते हैं we separate out what are the factors which are long term in nature and what is noise जो आपको short term volatility provide करता है. In my experience, the only factor which really matters in equity market is the economic growth of the country, which hopefully translates into more corporate profit and more into earnings growth. Geopolitical noise, I think agle hafte you will hear more of what is the election results. All this really does not matter. And the way we are looking at it, India is very uniquely positioned right now to grow in the next decade. And I've been talking about this all across the country, that the next decade is
Mhm.
actually a golden decade for the Indian equity market. And the reason why I'm saying this is the per capita GDP of the country is going to increase from about $2,300 to $5,000. And हमने ये observe किया है कि जब भी the per capita GDP goes up from 2000 to 5000, the returns that the market generates is one of the highest compared to its own history. So in the last 43 years, equity market, हमारा equity market ने तकरीबन तकरीबन 14% रिटर्न जनरेट किया है. तो
Mhm.
होपफुली ये स्टडी इंडिया में भी लागू होगी, तो वी आर इन फॉर सम वेरी गुड टाइम्स इन द इक्विटी मार्केट. बट ये जो नॉइज है, जियोपॉलिटिकल, स्टेट इलेक्शन, सेंट्रल इलेक्शन, शॉर्ट टर्म में इम्पैक्ट करेगा, थोड़ी वॉलेटिलिटी प्रोवाइड करेगा, पर इन द लॉन्ग टर्म इट डज नॉट मैटर.
Right, sir. The moment you said it's a golden decade, next decade is going to be the golden decade for the country. It sounds music to ears, and probably it's somebody what we are all looking for. Uh, it's nice to hear, sir. And so coming to this period, as you said, the volatility is going to be a part and parcel, but in the long term, it is always the economic growth. But at the same time, we need to take care of that volatility part also. So I think here comes to picture called balance advantage fund, because debt is an instrument which gives stability, equity is an instrument which gives growth, and we need to balance both growth and balance. So how do you think a balance advantage fund is going to be helpful for an investor to ride this growth opportunity for the next decade?
तो आई थिंक नीरज जी, सबसे पहले तो हमें ये अंडरस्टैंड करना है कि
Hmm.
व्हाट इज अ बैलेंस एडवांटेज फंड एंड हाउ इज इट
Correct.
डिफरेंट फ्रॉम अ टिपिकल हाइब्रिड फंड. तो
Right.
a balance advantage fund is nothing but a hybrid fund. It is a
Hmm.
सब कैटेगरी. तो अगर हम हाइब्रिड फंड्स को देखें, डिपेंडिंग
Hmm.
अपॉन कितना इक्विटी एलोकेशन है, यू हैव एट वन एंड ऑफ द स्पेक्ट्रम a
Hmm.
conservative hybrid where the net equity allocation is between 10
Hmm.
to 25%. Then you
Hmm.
have an equity savings product where the
Hmm.
net equity allocation is between 0 to 50. Then you have an
Hmm.
aggressive hybrid, which is between 65 to 80. And of course, then you have a balance advantage fund where or what we call a BAF category, जिसमें
Hmm.
the net equity can vary from 0 to 100% depending upon कैसे allocate करता है.
Hmm.
So, essentially, a balance advantage fund is nothing but an equity fund which
Hmm.
makes investment in two or three different asset classes. I
Hmm.
would say two or three because एक तरफ आपका इक्विटी आता है, दूसरी
Hmm.
तरफ डेट आता है, and there's a something what we call equity equivalent kind of asset, which is the arbitrage. So there are
Okay.
three asset classes that we invest in, and that is what constitutes a balance advantage fund. जैसे आपने सही कहा था कि इक्विटी रिटर्न प्रोवाइड करेगी, डेट स्टेबिलिटी प्रोवाइड करेगा, और अगर आपका नेट इक्विटी बिलो 65 है, तो
Hmm.
आर्बिट्राज आपको टैक्सेशन में हेल्प करेगा. सो दैट इज व्हाट अ
Hmm.
बैलेंस एडवांटेज फंड इज. तो अगर आपको लग रहा है कि मार्केट थोड़ा वॉलेटाइल है, आपको इक्विटी एलोकेशन कम करना है विदाउट लूजिंग द टैक्स एडवांटेज, then a BAF category can be a very good category to look at, or a balance advantage fund can be a very unique thing that you can look at.
वाओ सर, आपने बहुत बढ़िया सुंदर तरीके से ये जो डेफिनेशन सेग्रीगेशन आपने दे दिए हैं. आई थिंक somebody who is very new to mutual fund, there also will be very clear conceptually ki what is a hybrid fund, how it is different from balance advantage. So how does it work, these BEF funds, how does it work? uh, can we say that they are superior to hybrid? BEFs are superior to hybrid because they have got more flexibility. uh, the fund manager has got more freedom to adjust.
So, जैसे मैंने कहा था कि BAF is nothing but an equity fund where
Right.
the net equity varies from 0 to 100%.
Hmm.
Typically, most of the BAF will have an equity which is, or a gross equity exposure which is over 65%.
Hmm.
मुझे एक एग्जाम्पल उदाहरण देके आपको समझाना चाहूंगा इस समय. इफ माय
Hmm.
नेट इक्विटी एलोकेशन इज लेस देन 65%, say for example if it is at 50%, then I will do arbitrage to the extent of 15% so that my gross equity exposure is at
Hmm.
65%. Similarly,
Okay.
agar gross equity is more than 70%, then I don't have to do any arbitrage.
Hmm.
Uh, Anything which is residual, that means from 65 to 100, that will
Hmm.
be invested in the fixed income market or the debt market. Clearly, the equity is the one which will be generating alpha, and that is the
Hmm.
one, and debt will provide the stability and liquidity whenever the net equity allocation moves. Uh, इसमें सबसे महत्व की बात यह है कि how is the equity allocation determined? When I
Hmm.
said the equity
Correct.
allocation is between 0 to 100%, whether it's 10%, 20, 30, 50, 75, 80, 90, and I think that is going to be a key determinant for the
Hmm.
success of a fund, a balance advantage fund. रहा सवाल आपका कि is it superior to a hybrid fund? I think hybrid funds are of three categories, rather four categories if you include balance advantage fund. As I said, this uh,
Equity saving and
conservative hybrid fund, equity
hmm.
saving, and an aggressive hybrid fund. टिपिकली जो बैलेंस एडवांटेज फंड है वो हमेशा एग्रेसिव हाइब्रिड के साथ कंपेयर किया जाता है.
Hmm.
एग्रेसिव हाइब्रिड फंड का नेट इक्विटी एलोकेशन फिक्स्ड होता है बिटवीन
Hmm.
65 to 80%, से ऑन एन एवरेज 70% होता है.
Hmm.
बैलेंस एडवांटेज फंड का जो नेट इक्विटी है is between 0 to 100. On an
Hmm.
average, it is about 55 to 57. That is what I've observed for the category as a whole.
Hmm.
Okay. Which means that in a rising market,
Hmm.
a aggressive hybrid fund will
Hmm.
outperform a balanced advantage fund क्योंकि उसका net equity allocation ज़्यादा है. But
Hmm.
clearly, जब भी आप इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं तो आपको आपके रिस्क प्रोफाइल के साथ मैप करना है.
Hmm.
टिपिकली अगर आपको ऐसा इन्वेस्टमेंट करना है जिसमें आपको एसेट एलोकेशन नहीं डिसाइड करना, यू डोंट हैव द
Hmm.
टाइम और द रिसोर्सेज, तो आप बैफ कैटेगरी चूज करेंगे जिसमें इक्विटी एलोकेशन ऑटोमेटिकली चेंज होता रहता है एंड वो
Hmm.
आपका डिफाइन करता है. सो आपका सवाल था कि एग्रेसिव हाइब्रिड से रिटर्न सुपीरियर होगा या
Hmm.
एग्रेसिव हाइब्रिड का रिटर्न सुपीरियर होगा. शायद इन अ राइजिंग मार्केट एग्रेसिव हाइब्रिड, क्योंकि उसका नेट इक्विटी एलोकेशन ज्यादा होगा बैलेंस एडवांटेज फंड से, तो उसका
Correct.
सुपीरियर होगा. बट ऑन अ रिस्क एडजस्टेड बेसिस,
Hmm.
a BAF category will give you a better return. ये सब जो मैंने कहा है वो सब कैटेगरी एवरेज की बात कही है. इट इज
Hmm.
रियली नॉट अबाउट बरोडा BNP Paribas बैलेंस एडवांटेज फंड.
Correct. Thank you so much. Thank you. You have really made this point so clear. ये जो equity allocations का mechanism है, do you follow any kind of strategy, any factors that ये होने से ये होगा? And have you, in your own experience, because you have been managing funds, have you ever seen to what extent it has gone down and to what extent it's going to 100%? Have you seen it? Have you done it? Uh,
सो नीरज जी, मैं हमारे फंड का एक्सपीरियंस शेयर कर सकता हूँ. कैटेगरी
बिल्कुल.
में तो बहुत ही अलग है. ये जो हम लोग ने फंड लॉन्च किया था बरोडा BNP पारिबा बैलेंस एडवांटेज फंड, उसको इस समय 5 साल हो गए हैं.
Right, sir.
5 साल समवेयर इन लास्ट वीक और सो 5 years कंप्लीट ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड हो गए हैं. जब हमने लॉन्च किया था तभी हमारा जो नेट इक्विटी एक्सपोजर था was around 40%. Just before COVID, it was about
Mhm.
45% in December of 19. कोविड के पीक टाइम पे समवेयर इन मई
Mhm.
जून हमारा नेट इक्विटी एलोकेशन went up to as much as 90%.
Mm-hmm.
वो समय था जहाँ पे सब लोग डर रहे थे कि
Correct.
इक्विटी में पैसा डाले नहीं डाले। एंड अगर आप सच सही के मायने में देखने जाए, पूरा इक्विटी मार्केट दो मेजर फैक्टर, बिहेवियरल फैक्टर से इम्पैक्ट होता है। वन इज ग्रीड एंड द अदर इज फियर।
Mm-hmm.
During the COVID time, we had the maximum fear in the market. The
Mm-hmm.
fear that everything will collapse. And typically, at the peak of the market, you have tremendous greed. Let me put it simplistically. At the When there's maximum fear, the valuations are the cheapest. That is when you should be increasing your net equity allocation.
Mm-hmm.
When there's maximum greed in the market, the valuations are at the highest. That is the time when you should be reducing the equity exposure. And this
Mm-hmm.
is exactly what this fund does. When there was
Correct.
maximum fear or the valuations were the cheapest, this
Mm-hmm.
fund increased the allocation. It went up to almost 90%.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, at some stage, just before the breakout of COVID, we were close to at 37%. And
Wow.
primarily driven by the fact that the valuations at that time was very expensive.
Mm.
And that is the beauty of this model. It removes the human bias or the
Mm-hmm.
behavioral part of investing.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. I think there are some question. One is Mr. Vikrant Sarkar. उन्होंने पूछा था balance advantage fund. I think this has already been answered. I believe Vikrant, you might have got your answer. Okay. संजय जिंदाल, क्या इनमें लामसम करना और सिप से ज्यादा अच्छा होगा क्या? सो ये एक संजय जिंदाल का क्वेश्चन है.
मेरे हिसाब से अगर आप मार्केट को टाइम करना चाहते हैं, आई थिंक वो डबल काउंटिंग हो जाएगा, क्योंकि आप भी टाइम करेंगे एंड ये फंड ऑटोमेटिकली टाइम करता है. इसका जो एलोकेशन है वो ऑटोमेटिकली मूव करता है. जब भी
Correct.
वैल्यूएशन ऊपर होगा तो ये ऑटोमेटिकली आपका नेट इक्विटी कम कर देगा, एंड जब भी वैल्यूएशन सस्ता होगा तो इक्विटी एलोकेशन ऊपर चला जाएगा. तो मेरे हिसाब से इसमें बेस्ट इज टू डू अ lump sum rather than doing an SIP. So that
यहाँ
is
पे
the best.
टाइमिंग. Yes sir, please go ahead.
You're right. I mean, it eliminates. I mean, if I have to say what are the advantages of a balanced advantage fund, simple है. It eliminates the market timing.
Correct.
Very simple. दूसरी बात, you're investing in assets which are not correlated. हम equity में डालते हैं, debt में डालते हैं. तीसरी बात, it removes the human bias in investing. सबसे बड़ी बात होती है कि ये greed और fear जिसकी मैंने बात की थी, एंड क्योंकि आप डाइवर्सिफाई कर रहे हैं अलग एसेट क्लासेस में, इक्विटी है, डेट है, तो देयर इज सम डाइवर्सिटी. सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट, आपका डाउनसाइड प्रोटेक्ट होता है, क्योंकि हमने ये ऑब्जर्व किया है ये फंड में एंड एज अ कैटेगरी, इन अ फॉलिंग मार्केट a BAF category will do better than a full equity category, a hybrid category.
What?
And it captures most of the upside which is there, depending upon the net equity allocation. And सबसे important ये category का है कि it's a equity taxation.
I think you have said wonderfully that I think human emotion and our emotion always try to time the market, and it works against us, in fact, for investors who try to time keep on, and sometimes goes wrong and he miss out big things, big. And this particular fund takes that thing completely off the table. You have to, it takes care of it. So we have been talking so many good things about, so what are the risks associated with balance advantage fund? अगर हम रिस्क का बात करें तो क्या क्या रिस्क हो सकता है?
So, अगर हम फंड लेवल के रिस्क देखें तो जो इसके सब कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ द फंड, which is the equity and the debt, they are the risk part of it. Okay, so a typical equity is of course the source of return for this fund, and debt is the one which provides you the stability and the liquidity to invest. So any risk related to equity fund is applicable to the balance advantage fund also. For example, the market volatility is something that you have to live with. The second component would be cap. What type of market cap are you investing in?
Mm-hmm.
In Baroda BNP Paribas Balance Advantage Fund, we're using a multi-cap strategy. That means or a flexi-cap strategy where we will have allocation to large, mid, and small cap. And
Mm-hmm.
at times it's kind of difficult to, depending upon the fund manager, he'll take a call on what segment to be invested in. Similarly, the second part of the risk is, of course, in terms of fixed income. If somebody takes a duration call or the interest rate call or a credit call, I
Mm-hmm.
think we eliminated all of that. And the way we are positioned, we're using this as a buffer to ensure that there's enough liquidity provided. And I think the biggest risk in the balance advantage category is how are you making the net equity allocation call? Are you
Mm-hmm.
doing it, leaving it to the investment manager to decide?
Mm-hmm.
Are you determining it by a मॉडल मॉडल में भी बहुत सारे तरीके हैं आप
Mm-hmm.
फंडामेंटल फैक्टर्स यूज कर रहे हैं आप टेक्निकल फैक्टर्स यूज कर रहे हैं मार्केट मोमेंटम यूज करते हैं या कॉम्बिनेशन यूज करते हैं सो द नेट इक्विटी आल्सो वुड डिटरमिन व्हाट is the risk that you actually have.
Wonderful. And we encourage all our viewers to ask questions as much as possible. And I'm going to ask those questions to Sanjay ji as well. So Amit Kumar उन्होंने पूछे हैं सर लॉन्ग टर्म में बेस्ड रिटर्न फंड सिर्फ 5,000 रुपीज पर मंथ 15 to 20 ईयर्स पर्सपेक्टिव में सो लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए आप रिकमेंड करोगे बैलेंस एडवांटेज फंड 50 to 20 years perspective or some thematic fund, sectorial fund, or some other category?
So अमित जी इसमें ऐसा है कि हर प्रोडक्ट हर लोगों के लिए सूटेड नहीं होता आपका जो रिस्क प्रोफाइल है उसके आधार पर आपको इन्वेस्ट करना है एंड आपको थोड़ा सा डाइवर्सिफाई करना होगा इन ऑल एसेट क्लासेस जिस हिसाब से मैं आपका क्वेश्चन पढ़ के समझ रहा हूँ अगर आपका लॉन्ग टर्म विजन है एंड आपको मार्केट वॉलेटिलिटी नहीं चाहिए तो a balance advantage category can also be a very interesting category. अगर मैं कैटेगरी एवरेज का रिटर्न देखूं, I'm not talking about my Baroda BNP, सारे हाइब्रिड कैटेगरी के रिटर्न्स देखूं, इक्विटी सेविंग ने पिछले 5 साल में द कैटेगरी एवरेज has given about 9 to 10% average return. The conservative hybrid is between 8.5% and 9%. Balance advantage is between 10 and 11, about 10.5 to 11.5%. And aggressive hybrid ने around 14-15% return दिया है. Depending upon what fund you choose, जैसे अगर आप 5 साल प्लस का व्यू लेते हैं तो आपका थोड़ा सा एसेट ये कैटेगरी में तो आना ही चाहिए. ये कैटेगरी इज one of the very large categories in the overall mutual fund space. It's grown very well. काफी कॉन्फिडेंस दिखाया है and I will not be surprised if the same trend continues. Of course, हमारा जो बरोडा BNP Paribas Balance Advantage Fund है has delivered consistently superior returns not only against the benchmark but also compared to the overall category average. And I would definitely recommend that you should be invested in a balance advantage category. आपको रोज रोज का क्या वैल्यूएशन है सही टाइम है या नहीं है उसका आपको टेंशन नहीं रहेगा.
Okay. Ideally, while building a portfolio, मेरा कोर कितना परसेंट एलोकेट होना चाहिए approximately?
So नीरज जी बैफ में आपको उसकी चिंता नहीं होनी चाहिए कि नेट इक्विटी इक्विटी एलोकेशन कितना होना चाहिए क्योंकि वो ऑटोमेटिकली एडजस्ट होता है. गोल्डन थंब रूल रहता है कि 100 minus your age should be your equity allocation and that is what you should be following and that is a time tested formula which has worked very well. So that should be the equity exposure. the various sub-components, large cap कितना, mid cap कितना, multi cap कितना, flexi BAF, वो आपको अपने रिस्क प्रोफाइल पे डिपेंड करता है, आपका रिटर्न एक्सपेक्टेशन या गोल बेस्ड इन्वेस्टिंग पे करना होगा। हमने ये ऑब्जर्व किया है कि BAF कैटेगरी कैन प्रोवाइड यू almost equal to a full equity fund with a
Mm-hmm.
much lower risk
Risk.
exposure.
Mm.
तो आपका जो नेट इक्विटी एक्सपोजर मैंने आपको रिटर्न्स के प्रोफाइल बताया कैटेगरी एवरेज के is with a net equity exposure of about 55 to 60%,
Mm.
which is a very good risk adjusted return that you would look at.
Okay.
This category is about 15 to 20% AUM for the overall mutual fund industry.
Okay. There's a question from Prashant Lohia. What is the difference of BAF and arbitrage fund? दोनों का फर्क क्या है?
BAF में तीन लेग ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट्स होते हैं. वन इज अ प्योर डायरेक्शनल इक्विटी, then you have a fixed income component, and arbitrage is usually done in a BAF category only when the net equity exposure is less than 65%. So there is an element of market risk in BAF category, balance advantage fund, where depending upon the market movement you will get a return. In an arbitrage fund, you're not taking a call on the equity market, but you're only taking a call on the spread in the between the equity and the futures of that. Typically, the spread in an arbitrage fund is slightly better or equal to whatever is your interest rates in the market. So if you are happy with a risk-free return with the equity taxation, then you should be looking for an arbitrage fund. But if you are actually wanting to create wealth over a period of time, then you should be looking for an equity fund, including like a balance advantage fund. So a typical arbitrage fund will give you a return which is probably equal to what is a fixed income product in the market with the equity taxation. But a balance advantage fund should ideally give you a return which is much better than an arbitrage fund.
Okay. संजय जी, एक दीपक ने पूछा है कि I want to invest 20 lakh lump sum balance advantage fund for monthly dividend. वहीं पे उसका क्वेश्चन है कि 20 lakhs lump sum balance advantage fund for a monthly dividend. ये भी ऑप्शंस हैं.
So दीपक जी, मेरा सुझाव यही रहेगा कि instead of looking for a monthly dividend which may result in some bit of a taxation because your dividend is also taxable, I would suggest you invest lump sum and you do a systematic withdrawal plan, SWP, on a monthly basis, which will be a little more, it will definitely be more tax efficient for you rather than doing a monthly dividend. So that's a technicality. I would request that आप अपने टैक्स कंसल्टेंट से भी बात करके इस पे थोड़ी सी सलाह ले लें. That will be better rather than doing a monthly dividend, which may not be really efficient. I don't think it will change the return profile in any manner that you have, but typically on a post-tax return basis, an SWP will work out better for you. And a BAF category can be a very efficient way of doing that.
Okay. So वही क्वेश्चंस को हम लोग थोड़ा एक्सपैंड करें तो how are the taxes applied on to balance advantage fund? What is the tax treatment? Can you elaborate a little bit more?
So क्योंकि a balance advantage fund has a gross equity exposure of more than 65%, it is treated like an equity fund. तो जो आपके शॉर्ट टर्म इक्विटी फंड में लागू होता है या लॉन्ग टर्म रिटर्न मोर देन 1 year, the same taxations will be applied for a balance advantage fund. That will be no different from that. You just need to be a little careful because some of the balance advantage funds really don't have that mandate. Okay. At least I can speak for my Baroda BNP balance advantage fund. it will be treated as an equity fund only, because our gross equity exposure is always going to be more than 65%. So, from your point of view, as a category, if the mandate is to invest more than 65%, then it will be treated as an equity fund.
ओके नाउ आपने कहा है कि एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट कि रिस्क प्रोफाइल करना चाहिए एंड बेस्ड ऑन द रिस्क प्रोफाइल वन शुड गो फॉर हिज इन्वेस्टमेंट प्लान नाउ what kind of who should be investing in balance advantage fund? Somebody who is new to the investment, or who should be ideally? It's a broad question.
True, very true, Neeraj. The way I look at it is any first-time investor who does not mind taking an additional risk in higher equity component, then it's a good option to look at. Secondly, somebody who wants to create wealth over a long period of time, it can be a very good investment vehicle for them. And when investor who's looking for lower volatility, but is looking for near equity returns, then it can be a very good option. An investor who does not want to decide on the asset allocation between equity and debt, then it can be a very good option. Somebody who wants an equity exposure during uncertain times, then a BAF category can be a beautiful example. Somebody who does not want to time the market, whether this is the right value or no, again, this is a good vehicle to look at. This category can be great to look at. This is a category which has grown very significantly in the last 5 to 7 years, primarily because it's a very suitable category for most of the investors. And I believe it should be forming a part of one's asset allocation plan.
So it is for everyone. It is for everyone, irrespective of whether it's a first-time investor, whether you were a long-term wealth creations के लिए, for any point of view, this is a good fund to a good category to invest.
Absolutely. And I would say it is an all-season fund, because
All season.
when markets are bad, you can look at it because your net equity allocation is going to go up. When the markets are roaring, you would be worried whether it's at the peak. Again, it automatically adjusts the net equity, and it can be a great option to look at.
एक क्वेश्चन है मिस्टर संजय जिंदाल से, इसमें इक्विटी एलोकेशन कैसे रहता है? लार्ज कैप, मिड कैप, स्मॉल कैप एंड डेट फंड एंड जनरल रिटर्न कितने होते हैं?
ओके, सो अगेन इस पे जो इक्विटी एलोकेशन है वो बेसिकली हर बैलेंस एडवांटेज फंड मैनेजर क्या अलग अलग रहता है. कई उसे लार्ज कैप की तरह रन करते हैं, कई मिड कैप की तरह. हम लोग जिस हिसाब से रन करते हैं बरोडा बीएनपी, एक फ्लेक्सिबल अप्रोच यूज करते हैं. हम लोग कोई मार्केट कैप से पाबंदी नहीं रखते, हम उन्हें डाइवर्सिफाइड रखते हैं. डाइवर्सिफाइड अक्रॉस मार्केट कैप, डाइवर्सिफाइड अक्रॉस सेक्टर्स, डाइवर्सिफाइड अक्रॉस स्टॉक्स. जब हमने ये फंड शुरू किया था पिछले तकरीबन 5 साल पहले, हमारा लार्ज कैप एक्सपोजर वाज ऑलमोस्ट 90%. अगर मैं आज की तारीख में देखने जाऊं, जो इक्विटी कंपोनेंट है उसका लार्ज कैप कंपोनेंट इज अबाउट 57 to 60%. सो हमने जो स्मॉल कैप और मिड कैप का एक्सपोजर इसमें ग्रेजुअली बढ़ाया है, क्योंकि हमें वैल्यू दिख रही है. तो डिपेंडिंग अपॉन कौन किस तरह से देख रहा है, तो उनका जो SID में मेंशन किया है, पर हम लोग इसे फ्लेक्सी कैप की तरह रन करते हैं. दूसरा सवाल था कि इसमें डेट हम लोग कैसे रन करते हैं. जो हमारा अप्रोच है कि हम not only is the fund called dynamic in terms of net equity allocation, it is dynamic in terms of the way we manage the market cap. It is also dynamic जिस हिसाब से हम इसके ड्यूरेशन रन करते हैं. ड्यूरेशन ऑफ द डेट पोर्शन टिपिकली हमने इसमें ज्यादातर AAA पेपर्स ही रखे, मोर टुवर्ड्स द गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज फ्रॉम अ सेफ्टी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. तीसरा पोर्शन था आपका कि इसमें हम कितना रिटर्न एक्सपेक्टेशन कर सकते हैं। तो हमने
हम्म,
ये ऑब्जर्व किया है कि ड्यूरिंग द डाउन साइड इट प्रोटेक्ट्स the fall from the fall very significantly. On an upside, typical BAF would
हम्म,
capture most of the upside. अगर आप पूरे लाइफ साइकिल में देखेंगे जो हमने कैटेगरी एवरेज बताया था अबाउट 10.5 to 11.5%, पूरा कैटेगरी एवरेज है फॉर द लास्ट 5 years. अगेन ये हमारे फंड का नहीं है, ये एवरेज कैटेगरी का है। जैसे मैंने कहा था
हम्म,
कि बड़ौदा बीएनपी पारिबा पिछले 5 साल में कंसिस्टेंट आउट परफॉर्मर रहा है against the
हम्म,
benchmark and against the category average.
परफेक्ट। अगेन मलय से क्वेश्चन है, मलय व्हाट टाइप ऑफ फंड इज फॉर शॉर्ट टर्म? ये तो हम लोग ने लॉन्ग टर्म का बात करे हैं, शॉर्ट टर्म में अगर उनको राइड करना है मार्केट वेव।
So, Malay, I wish I had the answer. That is the magic, which I can tell you what is good for short term. It's very difficult to predict the short term movement of the market because that is determined by a lot of non fundamental factors, not a lot of volatile factors, a lot of noise in the market. And at times it's very difficult to predict the outcome of all those noises.
हम्म,
What will be the outcome of the state election? What happens if two of the five states go in the wrong direction from what the market perception is? What is the outcome of the war? What is the outcome of the negotiation between India, US, and China? All these factors come into play, and it's very difficult to take a very scientific call in terms of what is the view. So it's very difficult to give a short term call. It's as simple as life, you know. I don't
हम्म,
know where will I be next week, but do I know in the next 5 years I'm going to grow in my organization? I'm going to
यस,
grow in my business? And the answer is always yes, because I know directionally. But will I make that additional buck next
हम्म,
week? Very difficult to say.
हम्म,
So I'm sorry, I may not be the best person to answer the short term, but if you're
यस,
looking at consistent wealth creation and steady return, then the balance advantage category can be a very interesting category.
okay. Again, another very tricky question है सौरभ ने। Hi sir, if there is a small cap mutual fund which cash holding is showing as minus 0.88%, is it good to invest in that mutual fund? अगर कोई म्यूचुअल फंड में कैश होल्डिंग माइनस 0.88% दिखा रहे हैं, तो वो इसका मतलब क्या है? और हम्म,
Saurabh, मेरे हिसाब से my understanding of a mutual fund, and this is the way we run it, uh, the moment you say minus 0.88, yani he's negative cash, that means he's over invested. That is not permitted. I think
हम्म,
there could be a technical aspect where they may be receiving this cash. The net equity exposure can never be more than 100%. And
हम्म,
there is a technical aspect that we need to keep in mind. To answer your broader question, is it a right time to look at small cap fund? We've recently launched a small cap fund about
हम्म,
a month and a half back. And the pushback that we kept on getting was the valuations of the small cap are too high, etc., etc. While I would not tend to disagree, the only point of view that we had to make to our investors and to our channel partners and distributors, small cap investing is not about index. It is
हम्म,
about a bottoms up approach, looking at stocks, identifying the right value, and
हम्म,
investing in that. And trust me, we've been able to do that. And in the last 1 month, the markets have just reinforced our belief in that. That look,
हम्म,
it is not about index investing, it is about stock specific investment. So it's an interesting category to look at. Small cap, if you have the risk appetite, you should be looking at it. But having a cash position which is 1 or 2 or 3% is not really deterministic of how the outcome of that fund will be. Because what you have to look at is what is the balance 99, 98, or 97%. Is it
Hmm.
generating adequate returns or no? Which will be deterministic rather than just 1 or 2 or 5%.
Mhm. So, coming to now your fund, which has completed 5 years, Baroda BNP's Balance Advantage Fund. Apluka, main, what is the philosophy? What is the core philosophy that runs that behind it fund or investment objective?
So the primary objective of the scheme is to generate capital investment by investing in a portfolio of equity and equity-linked securities.
Mm-hmm.
The secondary objective is, of course, to generate income through investment in debt and money market instrument.
Mm-hmm.
The third objective, which is clearly a very important one, is to manage the risk through active asset allocation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, of course, run it like an equity fund. Uh, it has a net equity exposure of between 30 to 100%. I start off by saying that typically the BAF category has a net equity exposure between 0 to 100. We've
Mm-hmm.
defined a net equity allocation between 30 to 100%, and there's a science behind that. While the gross equity exposure will always be at 65%. The moment it falls below 65, we will use single stock arbitrage
Arbitrage.
position to get it to an equity fund. That is the key of Baroda BNP Paribas Balance
Mm-hmm.
Advantage Fund. That is the investment objective.
Okay. And when I was just going through your this thing, the risk factor, when you talk about standard deviation beta, this seems to be slightly on a higher side. But when you say risk adjusted return, it is better than the industry average. Um, so many of the new investors probably might be a little bit confused about both the term. So if you can just elaborate on this.
Sure. So when we are talking about the standard deviation, it's actually how volatile is it compared to the returns that you have on a
Mm-hmm.
normalized basis. When you compare it with the category average, uh, our fund it is a deterministic model-based net equity allocator. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the entire category, uh, there are some funds where the fund manager determines the net equity allocation, which is a problem according to me because that brings in a human bias of what
Mm-hmm.
is right and what is the right investment level. Some fund managers use some model which have technical factors which we don't understand. Maybe they understand it better. We use only fundamental factors. Uh, our model is indicating that the net equity allocation should be closer to about 70%, and that's where we are right now. While the category average is lower than that, and this is something which has been consistently happening over the last couple of quarters. So
Mm-hmm.
naturally, if my net equity exposure is higher than the category, the standard
Mm-hmm.
deviation I will have against the category is going to be higher. However, the returns that we've generated and for that additional risk that we've taken is far superior than
Mm-hmm.
most of my competitors in the category. And that is why it is important to look at what is the risk adjusted return. For every incremental 1% of equity, is the return being compensated or no? And that is very important for me. And that is what we are looking at, a risk adjusted return.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Thank you. Sanjay ji, एक Malay who had asked about best fund for short term, जो short term वाला question, उनके follow up questions आए हैं. Because I have multiple investment in tech saver, dividend, and multi asset, and those funds are overlapping about 49% of my portfolio. I need to worry. Do I need to worry about that? Should I worry about that?
So I think a tax saver is typically you do it because of the tax advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. If I look at a typical tax saver ELSS plan, the allocation typically for a small cap is anywhere between 30 to 40%. So to that extent, it is better off. A
Mm-hmm.
dividend yield is typically a thematic fund, more like a value proposition. In a multi-asset, you have three different asset classes: equity, debt, and at sometimes you have gold, silver, depending upon what kind of a this thing you have. I would also recommend that you need to have a little bit of a BAF category, a little bit. It'll give you some form of a kicker, because a dividend yield fund, while it's a great thing to have in a cycle, may
Mhm.
not give you that in terms of your portfolio return. So to that extent, I don't think I'll be worried, provided you're a conservative investor. And if
Mhm.
I overlay it with what you mentioned of the short term, I think if you're looking for a additional alpha, then you should be investing even in a balance advantage fund.
Great. Uh, I think Sanjayji, we are seeing lots of participations. Lots of young people are actually asking questions. That's a great thing. Now, as a conclusion, in the closing remark, what would be your suggestion to investors who are seasoned investors, who are new investors, long-term investors, how to create wealth from your own experience? What would be your final suggestion to them, sir?
So, Neeraj, I've been in the equity market for 30 years now, close to
Hmm.
34 years. And when I entered this market, uh, people were treating mutual fund as a stock. Okay,
Hmm.
when to enter, when to exit. You rightly mentioned that you are having a lot of young investors, and I would add to the fact that these young investors are financially mature investors, and they understand the importance of goal-based investing. They're
Absolutely.
investing for a purpose, and that is very important. As long as you're defining the purpose and sticking to your investment philosophy, I think over a period of time, you will reach your financial goals. As long as you're consistent, you should be using these volatility, short term aberration in the market to your advantage by topping up your investments. And I think that's something which I'm really pleasantly surprised. People come
Hmm.
back and tell me that, look, these SIPs and the flows to the mutual fund what might taper off, and that could actually impact the market. I believe that the way the equity cult has spread, and the realization of the people that this is one of the best avenues to fulfill your financial goal, is really heartening for me.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And thanks all our viewers, in fact. They have been consistently participating and asking questions, making it interactive. And we really would like to appreciate. And of course, now we have got so much of programs, and we are trying to educate our viewers on every aspect. Let it be, investing through equity, mutual funds, different types of mutual fund. So, like to thank them. And also, thank you so much, sir, for sparing your time from your very busy schedule and be a part of this program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dheeraj. It's been very enlightening, and I think some of the questions which I got were really thought provoking, uh, and insightful. It actually makes me also start thinking in a certain manner and understand the investor psyche a lot better. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you, sir. Bye bye.
Bye bye.